Hi everyone. Oh, this is mad awkward because there's nobody here right now. Hi. Oh, here. How are you guys? Oh my gosh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hi. Can you all hear me? I hope they can. Okay. Bet. Okay. So, William, I'm just going to start it and then I'll invite you in, okay? Hi, you guys. Okay. So, hi everybody. Welcome down to Watered Down, episode 5. I am so excited about this episode. We're talking about carbon emissions today, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, and then I'm going to invite our awesome guest. Okay. So, I want to say about earlier this year. Oh, hey y'all. Hey. I want to say about earlier this year, I worked with Citizens Climate Lobby Group. They're an environmental group and they are basically like kind of like grassroots. So they kind of bring to the forefront policies and ideas that people should be thinking about when it comes to goodbye to make it to the forefront. But I would say I was mobilizing college students and watering down everything carbon, from carbon emissions, carbon sequestration, carbon capture, cap and trade, nuclear power solutions and substitutes, and renewable energy, and the need for innovation. Hi, you guys. Hi. So today we will be learning and talking with William Jones about what carbon is, where is the majority of emissions coming from, decarbonization, the Supreme Court's recent ruling of West Virginia versus EPA, and how to reduce our overall carbon footprint. Hi, you guys. Okay, so I'm going to invite William and we will get started. So let me see. Invite to join. Hi.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Oh, this is so awesome. Thank you so much.
No, for sure. I'm really glad you reached out. It was definitely unexpected from that last webinar that I had done previously. So that was my first one, and so just hearing you reach out, that was really warming. So I appreciated that.
You did amazing. Oh, well, if they don't know, can you tell them a little bit about what you were doing? And like tell them who you are first off.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't know how you wanted me to go. Like, okay, well, at least to that last webinar, right? Because that was through I'm pretty sure that was the environmental leadership program, which I still struggle to actually think how to designate. Like, I'm not sure. I don't think it's they manage the Doris Duke alumni program, right? But either way, I did a webinar with them, essentially on economics and decarbonization, um, and we just kind of discussed, right, like what it looks like in order to actually reach net zero, um, and some of the costs and benefits of like making that transition. Um, but just as like I guess to go to your first question though, about like who I am, right? So my name is William Jones, right? I'm from Macon, Georgia. I graduated from the University of Georgia in 2018. Um, I got my degree in economics and management, uh, and then after I actually did the Doris Duke program. Actually, that's probably a good time to mention that. Yeah, like that's how I actually started within the environmental field, was through Doris Duke at Northern Arizona University, which
Okay.
for everyone who's listening, that's like a 2-year internship program that's sponsored by the Doris Duke Foundation for like people interested in environmental and conservation uh, jobs. But either way, did that. Then I worked for a few nonprofits. I worked for Friends of the Earth, and then I transitioned to the EPA for 2 years, and then I work in my current role as an investment analyst.
Oh wow. I did not know that.
Wait, which part? Tell me.
No, I knew
Oh,
I
well,
knew
I connected on the Doors Duke, but yeah,
Yeah,
you know
that's
that.
how I connected, but I didn't know all of that other stuff, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was good like to go through that path, and just to be able to kind of get a gauge for where I wanted. Because I mean, I'll wait to answer to say this because it's part of another question I know you got. Um, but yeah, it was just good to actually be able to get a different, test the waters and see what it is like in nonprofit space, the governmental uh, space, and obviously now in like the private sector.
Yeah. So how'd you get on carbon? Like that's where we're going. How'd you pick?
Carbon.
Because I know environmental. Like when we think about, there's a lot of different sectors that an environmentalist can go into. So
Yeah.
how'd you choose carbon?
Um, It actually, I mean, apart from inherently, having just an interest in it, like my first through the Doors Do program, like I did an internship with the Grand Canyon Trust, and they kind of, worked with, I guess, like ranchers and the Native American tribes there, and the nations there. Um, but really, where I think it came from was my first job with, I was an economic policy fellow for Friends of the Earth in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And the project that they initially had me work on was deforestation. Um, so a lot of that was trying to catalog all of the financial institutions or consumer companies essentially that through one way or another have some type of exposure to deforestation, whether that's in their supply chain or in their loan book or even through third party, right through shipping, like through a host of different ways. So um, that's what actually allowed me to start focusing on like, okay, well, let me think. How do you think about carbon in terms of actual mitigation and like tackling it from I guess like a proactive way rather than a reactive way?
Okay. Oh, that's no, that's good that you said that because you talked about that in your. Oh well, we getting ahead of ourselves because I'm like, that's something you talked about in your presentation. You were just kind of like a lot of environmentalists. They come from the standpoint of, um, like you said, a more defensive side versus like actually going into the different sectors and saying, okay, what can I do to change the system? So I really like that. Okay, so we need to give people background. So I'm gonna start. So you told us a little bit about yourself, and then I asked, why is the work you're doing something everyone should be aware of?
I was struggling because I was like, I don't want to be too philosophical with this question. Because in reality, I'm like, okay, well, why does anyone need to like?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, to the extent that like and I keep drawing back on Doris Duke, but that's how I started, right? Like I mean that's 2016. That's how I really got my foot, I feel like, in the environmental field. But at the same time I felt like through that program you're kind of geared to only think about working in conservation or work, like working at some wildlife center, working for the forestry service, and it's like, okay, well, or or working for another nonprofit organization, which also for. Um, but it was just frustrating to me personally because I didn't feel like I was like, okay, well, how can I personally quantify this impact, right? Um, if you're not an organizer, right, like within some type of like nonprofit, I'm sure you're familiar with like, then it's different in terms of how you actually interact with people.
Right.
Um, and so, I mean, DC still, it's all good for DC. I feel like for anyone's career, they should definitely hit DC. But either way, yeah, I just kind of felt like I needed something that where I could personally feel like I could make a difference. And that's kind of what I'm seeing now in my current role.
Okay. Okay. I feel like we're gonna have a good talk. Okay, okay. So we're gonna give everyone a little bit of background. So I call watered down because a lot of times these issues or these environmental crisis, which you may call it, people don't really understand what's actually going on. Like they hear terms like climate change and carbon, and they hear all these terms, but they really don't know what they actually mean or how they can help in the movement, or even just there's so many factors that go into what's happening in climate change that people don't even know those those different. So first off, you guys, carbon is a natural element and it's very abundant in nature.
Oh, it's like
That it's found in nature. But you may see it in processes like photosynthesis, different respiration processes, dead organisms or waste. A lot of these things emit carbon, right? But we use this word as a shorthand to talk about carbon emissions, which is, or CO2, which you guys probably know about. But carbon emissions are emissions that come from the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, something he just talked about. These are climate change accelerating factors. So, a question for you is, where is all the carbon coming from? Because everybody's saying, oh, I'm driving my car, I'm emitting carbon, but it's like, it can't be that much. So, where else are carbon or is carbon being emitted from?
okay.
Oh, why are you
I want.
laughing?
It's funny you said that, right? I guess to your point about like watering it down, and when you think, because I want to answer the question, but also to your point about like, yeah, if you don't generate a lot of emissions because of you don't drive, you maybe don't drive as much, gas is too expensive. Um, I just feel like you have to think about it from a holistic standpoint, right? In terms, and especially for a lot of like us, like younger people, you live in an apartment building, like you're probably not thinking a lot about where your energy comes from. Like you might have a gas bill or electric bill, but like that's kind of just off mind. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just not in your mind to say I should have access to like renewable energy, right? Or be able to make that selection. And so that's happening, on a state level. But to answer your question, like where do the emissions come from? It actually is from transport, and it is from like the power, right? So how do you actually run the power plants themselves? How do you run all of the critical infrastructure that we have, right? Like a lot of that's diesel powered, a lot of it's run uh, on gasoline, right? Like even think about like federal emergencies, right? And they bring in all the generators. Like you're not bringing in like solar, panels that are solar installations. Like a lot of that's gasoline and diesel engine. So when we talk about decarbonization and why it's important, right, is because you don't want those substances to be trapped in our atmosphere. Um, which thereby would accelerate like global warming. I guess if you want to use global warming in that sense. Um,
Oh, wait, and decarbonization, you guys, is just another word of like reducing carbon in the atmosphere. Because a lot of people don't even know that term.
no, that's fair, right? Because it is kind of broad, especially when you think about it too. Like it's not just using like wind and solar energy. A lot of that might come to like whether you decide to take public transport. Like I'm gonna touch on that later in our conversation, but it's also like considering using a scooter or e-bike, which obviously like I mean I'm from Macon, Georgia, so it's not uh
Are you making?
I'm from Macon, Georgia, right? So it doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to
It
not
does.
have a car. You
Right
can't have a
there. Yeah.
like it just it's not so a lot of that is also kind of on a this also later, but this touches on how we actually design our cities, like how we choose to tackle like this transition that we have to make.
Okay. So the fourth question, since you kind of you touching on all the questions, so we just gonna
It's
have
very broad. It's like broad, you know what I mean?
yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so is decarbonization the answer to our climate crisis?
It's not the only. I mean, it's half of the answer, right? Like ultimately, you have to reduce. We need to reduce emissions, right? Which primarily means like reducing consumption,
Right.
or making like the sources that we do use more efficient and less emittive.
Right.
Um, so it's not the only answer, and like I spend a lot of time just in my work itself, like looking at carbon capture and like the viability of that, the scalability. Like, are there enough financial incentives, right? Like, what is actually going to move the needle for some of the people to make these type of investments?
Right.
Um, and frankly, like it's just when you're kind of waiting on people, if you're waiting on the private sector to move, it's like that's not going to happen. You kind of need that regulatory arm to kind of nudge in the right direction.
Right. I
Um,
had I was talking with someone earlier this week about it, and I was just like, okay, you know, a lot of times when it comes to carbon, I feel like, well, especially right now because gas is so expensive, I feel like people would think that now's the time to start thinking about, renewable energy or like EVs, electrical vehicles. Y'all all want a Tessie. It's just like the idea would be to the forefront, but I think people are more so scared of, I don't know, of what those newly found components of like sustainable measures would do. Does that make sense?
Now, keep asking a different way.
Like, because gas is so expensive, you would think people want to move towards electrical vehicles or renewable energy. But I think because, like you said, they don't know the um, the payback of it. They
Okay.
don't. They would rather not go towards those options. They would rather stay where we're at, producing carbon as we are,
I
instead of
mean, that's a little complicated though, right? It's hard. Like, I mean, who's gonna finance all that?
yeah,
Like, okay, you're gonna sell your vehicle, and then like there's so many other factors that just go into it that make it harder. And like, it's not always just the cost alone. Like I feel like I saw an exchange yesterday with like Pete Buttigieg and like the what is he? He's the head of the Department of Transportation. I don't know if he's an administrator, the technical term, but either way, that he was having a debate in Congress about the cost of EVs, and he's talking about how like I think it was like a Chevy Bolt is $26,000, and it's like even if that's a cheap vehicle to buy, who's gonna buy a vehicle right now? Obviously, like
not
most
me.
people have access to a new car right
Right,
now. So uh, there's so many other factors I think that
right.
kind of the heart of it. And so, fortunately for me, I live in New York, and this is kind of goes to the other question. So I'll just say it now, like in terms of what I personally do. So
Okay.
when I graduated school, I knew I was gonna leave my car in Georgia. Like I was gonna go to DC, use their public transport, and like I haven't had a car with me since like 4 years now.
Oh.
And especially being in New York, it's just too easy.
On infrastructure, like,
Yeah,
what I'm saying, like DC and New York, they purposely made those cities in a way that people can't transport. You know what I mean? But like, say for instance, like in Orlando,
yeah. I haven't been to Orlando in a long time, but I've heard like their transportation system is like okay. I mean, for the South, for Florida.
it's not consistent.
I mean, I wouldn't expect that either. Like I've heard the same thing about Miami,
Okay,
actually. Take the
yeah,
train, but yeah. I mean, that's also like, and then you also have to think about like the cost of living because obviously rent is at the top of anyone's mind. And on top of finding a place you live, like there's so many other factors I think that make it harder for you to keep like
right,
at the front of your mind because you're thinking about cost at the same time it's at the back of your mind because you don't. It's almost like it seems out of your hands.
right.
It is, which is like a weird paradox, but. Um, I
I'm
think
like,
ultimately, like the answer is just more active consumerism, and like being more deliberate about what you buy and how
right.
you buy it. Like, I mean, it's through the course of life you could get burnt out, but I mean, at the same time, it's a discipline like anything else.
No, you're right. I think people. I also think people in those regards to being conscious of like like that discipline of starting out small. People can also. Oh, we're going all over the place. Like we're not even we're going past questions, but
And
like,
I all lined up too, like written out.
but to actually think about the companies that they're putting their money towards, like some of these companies are at the forefront or at the top of emitting carbon in the atmosphere. And I think we think it's really complex. Like you said, it's really hard because sometimes we'll like, okay, well, I need to put my money, I need to buy this. They have the product that I want, but then we also neglect or forget that our dollars have power. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does.
Okay, because sometimes I be talking in my head and people don't understand what I'm saying. Okay, so the next question. We're almost done. Okay, okay. because we went all over the place. Okay, so in light of us trying to work towards a sustainable system, how will the Supreme Court's new recent ruling of the West Virginia versus EPA impact our goals to reduce carbon emissions? So I feel like this is a good section to. Okay, so if you guys don't know, I'm just gonna break down what West Virginia versus EPA is, because some people might not even know.
No, that's fair. I
Okay, okay,
it's the same thing. I forget that it's not just common to think about,
right.
right? Not in your frame of reference. But
I think never mind. I was about to say the FBI knows us and they have the algorithm set up, so they know that we watching it, so they put it on that timeline. But the West Virginia versus EPA is an environmental regulation case that but does not eliminate the agency. The EPA's agency is regulating over on making federal policies on climate issues or carbon emissions. So they struck down the Clean Power Plan, but it was repealed and replaced with the Affordable Clean Rule. This established emission guidelines for states to follow to limit carbon emissions. But honestly, well, I'm gonna let you say what you think, and then I'm gonna say what I think. So, how do you think the recent ruling of them saying, okay, kind of putting a narrow scope on EPA's regulation, how do you think that's going to affect our steps towards our goals of decreasing our carbon emissions?
I mean, obviously, it's like a step back, right? Um, in terms of at least like the timing, like when you're saying you need action now, and now you're saying, okay, you're sending it back to Congress. Like it's almost like anything else. Like it goes to the Senate, and do you really expect anything to get done? So we're
Right.
in here. In the grand scheme, I don't think it's too bad because it's still up for contention, and there's still room for the EPA to draft another plan, and to like tackle emissions another way. Um, but obviously, like, yeah, I mean, it's not the it's not the ruling anyone would have been like you would have hoped for. But I don't think you can really expect much out of government in multiple ways right now, anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just to say it like that.
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it. Um, I said, or I was researching, and it was just like it's going to create. I wrote it down. It creates roadblocks for the current administration to achieve our 2030 goal to reduce emissions to 50 to 52% below 2005 levels of carbon emissions. But right now we stand at 15%. So in my head, 2030 is literally right around the corner. That's just in my head of how my calendar's set up. It's literally right around the corner, and we're at 15%, and we need to be at 50%. And then to see this regulation, it's almost like, wow, like we're not going to make it.
Well, you know what's interesting is like I saw like President Biden did he did an address today, excuse me. I think it was in like Maryland or something, but essentially it was about like it was about the lack of inaction on climate in Congress, and so he announced how he's going to take steps in the executive branch. Um, so I think it's like within the next couple of weeks he's going to release like a White House plan specifically targeting like I guess energy efficiency measures and like how they expect America right to reach its like goals. Um,
Yeah.
the plan is like it's like 2.3 billion, so it's not a small plan, but I feel like in terms of the overall investment needed to shift us to I guess what you said is 52% is more than 2.3 billion. It's like like the government I feel like is spending a lot of money, and it's there's only so many ways they can spend it, right? And so it's very imperative like if you send where if you send an agency some odd billions of dollars, like okay, there should be very strict guidance on how that money's allocated, but you know that's in a perfect world.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like okay, so we already kind of talked about it, but we can speak on it again. The last question. So the last question was, how have you made strides to reduce your carbon footprint, and what can our viewers do to reduce theirs? So I feel like you talked about it. Like you live. Can
Yeah.
you think how carbon has impacted climate control? That's a comment from the people.
From the people. How has carbon impacted climate control? Well, I
It's been
mean,
degrees all summer. I'm screaming. Okay, so they're saying, how has carbon? Okay, I guess people don't know this. This is good though. Thank you for asking. It's hot outside, and people want to know how carbon is affecting that heat. That's what they want to know.
I mean, you ever been? I mean, everybody. I'm sure most people probably been in the city somewhere and it's hot in the summer, and you outside and it's like the cars outside too, and you just walking by the cars, you're like, damn, it's hot as like even that, like, just think about that, right? And it's like, even if you inside or you not around, you're not thinking about everything that's on, everything that's powering the building, right? So like, even in New York, when you talk about being like what, like a heat island, right? Like, what is it? I don't have the right term, but when it's just so hot in the city, just even from the subways itself, like, uh,
Yeah,
and think about all of that gas and all of that, like everything that's in the air just being, trapped, right?
yeah.
If the heat literally cannot escape because it keeps getting reflected back and down and like it stays, how else?
It's almost like a ceiling.
Yeah, like it is. So, uh, I hope that answers the question.
No,
Yeah, don't go.
they said that's good. Okay.
That's, uh,
I'm glad we can answer y'all's questions. Okay. So yeah, so how have you made strides to reduce your carbon footprint, and what can the viewers do to reduce theirs?
Man, to be honest, especially when I think about like people just our age, I mean, again, it's a regional divide. Like for my folks in the South, if you in Atlanta, I don't know how you can really do what you need to do without a car. Like, I know some people who rely on MARTA. I don't know. I've never had to rely on MARTA, but I know, obviously that how willing are people to move to a city and have to pay that rent as well. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you can move to parts of Maryland and still kind of access, their
right,
transportation. But I feel like transportation is probably one of the biggest means that we collectively can cut our emissions. Uh,
right.
and then also, like, especially if you're not going to own a home, I'm trying to think because there are certain states that enable you to be able to choose like where you get your energy from. But I'm not sure if that's specifically tied to being a homeowner or not. So I just have to check back up on that. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, I'm not buying, straws for the house. Like, it's certain, it's just certain things you don't do anyway. So I feel like it's maybe just being more evident using like maybe less plastic bags, right? Like, I don't know.
Like okay,
Black
because
people say bag, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Yeah.
those are good. I feel like because I'm on Twitter, so I be hearing what people be saying about Twitter, and it's like somebody just I'm not gonna say who because who knows where things are gonna come from, but this person posted a picture of two jets, and they was like, "Which one we taking?" And it was just almost kind of like, and someone had commented and said, "Okay, why do I need to drink out of a straw if these are the people that are, it's almost like people will tell me to drink a straw out of a straw, not drink out of a straw, ride the bus, and do all of these measures. But it's like, even if we did that, there are still people, you know what I'm saying? I'm screaming. Somebody said the Kardashians. No,
Yeah.
literally.
I hear people say at the same time, it's like, I mean, to me, I mean, that's like on a community level though. Like, I mean, yeah, like, I don't know how you can address wealth. If anyone had the answer to address wealth, I don't know that we would have to have this conversation. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's so to that point, it's only about how you can impact your community, right? Like, I mean,
That's
if
good.
if you can help reduce the energy like burden, especially like within your own community, I feel like that's a way to tackle it. And I mean, it's not like you have to watch your energy, your meter, like reading the meter all the time, but like I feel like it's just little things, even like in terms of being wasteful, like leaving on lights, running water too much, like that's just little things that for real, it's just you don't think about it all the time, but it adds up. And just yeah, just being more conscious as a consumer about where you shop, who you shop with, like I feel like there is a market for more conscious products. I just think they have terrible marketing, and it's also they also generally cost more,
Yeah.
right? You want like a green product, like okay, you're gonna pay that premium. So
For,
how
yeah.
long are people gonna pay that premium? Uh, Especially in an environment like this. Like I mean, people don't even have to you don't have to understand inflation to know things cost more. You don't have to
Right.
understand markets to understand things, so yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was really fun.
No, it was. I was hoping. I hated that I kept jumping, but it's just hard. Like when it's a more flowing conversation. So
No, you're good. People are commenting while some are watching their footprints, others minimize the significance of preserving limited resource items. Yeah, so it's just a lot to it. It's a lot of things that people are thinking, but now I just want people to be able, I want this space to be for people to just talk about it, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like a lot of times, I mean, when I came to your presentation, like, I was like, yo, this is cool. Cause like it was other people on the presentation, like that actually wanted to know about it. And it just made me feel more seen because it's like, okay, I want to know about this. Do other people want to know about this? And are other people actually talking about this? And for you to have a whole presentation on it, I'm like, okay.
yeah, and I mean, I feel like to that point, it is a lot of information overload. Like within the environmental movement or sector alone, like you can see like 100 graphs a day. I don't know that people need that much information to, like it's just too much at times. On top of everything else, like how many other things can be going on? Like it's like even if you're just passively scrolling on Twitter, and like the main reason I keep Twitter is for the news
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
can learn something, right? Like it doesn't benefit me to just delete it because I feel like I need a social media like breaks. Like no, bro, you read the news, like keep up, okay. Uh, but that's obviously now like I have a different mindset now. But like, um, but yeah, it just is a lot to keep up with, and apart from that, right? I feel like that's why you have to think about it actively. It's like, okay, well, would it be nice? Like, do you like to bike? Do you like if you like being outside? It's like, well, would you consider getting an e-bike? Would you, and thinking about how you move around your environment itself. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any like thing to say, anything to plug? This is your chance to plug it.
Uh, mm, I don't know. It depends. I guess I should have came prepared with something to plug. Like, I feel like if I would plug anything, I would plug the IPCC report. Go read that. You know what I'm saying? They got a breakdown. If anyone actually, just wants to know more about like how we plan on mitigating like our carbon emissions on a like broad basis, uh, that's what I would look at.
Yeah.
Their sixth assessment report that they just released, and it's a working paper, so they'll finish it through the end of this year. Um, but it has a wealth of information. I think it does a good job of giving you a foundation of like here's where we are now. So you're not just seeing past information and being like, well, I thought this was the case, or I thought we're not warming. Like no,
You
just
got to do
most
archive.
recent. Just
Right.
I promise it's like a summary. They have a literal summary. You know what I'm saying? Like it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, William. Anytime, anything you need, just let me know.
Not for sure. No, thank you for inviting me as well.
No problem. It's called the ICC. I'll try to, if you can send it to me so I can like, okay.
I got you.
Okay. Well,
All right.
thank you guys.
No,
Thank you. Um, Tune in for next time, you guys.
no, I know I will. All right. Thank you.
Oh, let's see. Thank you guys so much for joining. I really enjoyed this talk. I feel like now we're starting to get into the groove of watered down. I can't wait for more talks. More talks are definitely coming. I'm meeting people daily. And you might even see more than environmental talks because I feel like a lot of times, you know, just more conversations need to be had. And I, as a person, I'm evolving and, my passions are evolving. So you guys will definitely be seeing more talks. So thank you guys for joining and I'll see you next time. Bye.